were three brothers. They lived at the time when the great King Solomon was reigning, and they knew of the powers of this great king, his ability to know the language of the birds and the animals, his power over the winds and the elements, and his wisdom. So they decided that they would travel to the capital to seek his tutelage. So they had been there for a period of 3 years when they decided that they had not learned wisdom. So they went to King Solomon to take their leave. They thanked him, but said that they had felt that they had not learned anything. So King Solomon said, "Yes, you may leave, and I give you as a gift 10 pieces of gold each. But of course, you could choose 3 pieces of wisdom instead." But all 3 of them decided that they would take the gold. So they all left. But on the road, as they were riding along, the 3rd son, the youngest son, had a change of thought. So he said to his brothers, "I have made a mistake. I would choose the wisdom, but I was seduced by the gold. Let us go back and choose this wisdom." But the other brothers scoffed at him and said, No, we can give you 3 pieces of wisdom, but we're going on." But the youngest son decided he would go back. When he went back and met with King Solomon, he said to King Solomon, of course, "I'm sorry, I made a mistake in choosing the gold. I seek from you the 3 pieces of wisdom that you offered." And the 3 pieces of wisdom that King Solomon gave him were: first, always seek shelter before the sun goes down, and never cross a river when it is in flood, and treat your wife like your best friend and confidant. So the youngest son left, and he caught up with his brothers, but he did not tell his brothers what King Solomon had said. So they rode on, and they came to an inn that was really in the middle of nowhere. But recognizing the distance that was to be traveled, and remembering the first piece of advice or wisdom, the youngest brother said, "Let us stay at this inn for the night." But the other brothers said, "Look, the sun is still high in the sky. We can travel a great deal further today. But you can stay. Is this the advice that King Solomon gave you?" And they laughed and scoffed at him. But the 3rd son stayed at the inn. He had a lovely hot meal and spent a very comfortable and warm night. But his brothers who rode on came up to a mountain pass where a great storm, a great snowstorm came. So they were both frozen to death. So the next day, when the 3rd brother went on his way, of course he had to traverse this mountain pass, and he found the bodies of his brothers. Greatly saddened, he said the rites of passage over them and buried them as best he could. But he did take the gold that King Solomon had given them, and then he rode on. But as the day wore on, he came to a raging river in full flood, and he did remember the wisdom that King Solomon had given him. So he sought high ground. But as he looked down at the river, he saw two men riding donkeys who rode in to that raging torrent. He tried to shout to them from his vantage point, but his voice was caught by the wind, and they did not hear. So when they came to the middle of the river, he watched as the two men and their donkeys drowned. The next day, when he went down, the river had abated, and as he was crossing, he found the two bodies of the donkeys, and found that they'd been laden down with bags of gold. So he took the gold and went on his way. Finally, he came to his home, and there he was reunited with his wife. And remembering the wisdom of King Solomon, he treated her like his closest friend and confidant, and he told her all that had happened in complete detail. Now, of course, the wives of the other two brothers came, and they were told of the loss of life of their husbands, but they also noted that the youngest brother had a great deal of gold. So they blamed the youngest brother for killing their husbands and stealing their gold. Now the wife spoke up and adamantly told the other wives that her husband was telling the truth, but they didn't believe her. So she spoke up and said, "Then let us go to King Solomon, the wise, who will tell us of this." So the two wives agreed. They all went into the presence of King Solomon. King Solomon confirmed what had happened. No, this brother did not murder your husbands. It was because they chose gold over wisdom. They did not follow the law of nature. But the gold that was given to them will be given to you. What is the symbolic meaning for us of gold and wisdom? And what did it mean, the statement of King Solomon, to say, "It was because your husbands chose gold over wisdom, they did not follow the law of nature"? What's the deep meaning of the symbols in this statement for us? What have we learned as the difference between impermanency and permanency? And what is this law of life that we are now living and growing more and more to understand? Gold and wisdom, permanency and impermanency. And the law of life that we now find ourselves living like the truth just revealed by Jaya. We cannot have true surrender without death, dying.
Well, the impermanency is obviously the goal, and the permanency thing is the wisdom. And with life, we just follow, nature, like whatever. I don't know anything after that.
Yes.
It's like a web. So the death is in the moment. By being present in the moment, then all that is present informs us, so to speak.
And if we relate that to being in alignment with the dimensions of life, in harmony with life, then that law is in operation. But can we name that law? What is this law of nature that is becoming more and more real for us? We know it's only to be found in the present moment with our attention and our focus of mind. What is that law of nature?
What comes to mind is creation, which is not just creation, which is kind of like God, but it's a creative.
The force,
Principle,
the life
that's
force,
right, the force of
right,
life, yes.
the
Yes.
Chi,
Mm.
whatever, the force of life itself, the breath. You bring it down to that, isn't it? What the name would we give it as? What is it that we come back to? What is it that we surrender to? What is it we die?
Change. Change.
Change is what happens. Change is life, isn't it? But this law, because they did not follow the law of nature,
It has to be like, like the youngest one then knew that what he'd done didn't feel right.
right?
So he went back and corrected it.
Yes.
Or he went back and sought whatever it was.
Then don't we
the
do
truth.
that now? We find ourselves being bounced back.
Yeah.
I have to say this. I have to speak this truth, no matter what the cost. Would make this act, no matter what. Isn't it?
And then because the others didn't do that, then their life was shit, really, wasn't it?
Die.